Hello there, and welcome to Tales of the Force, a place for fans to tell their Star Wars stories. Joining me today is Kent. Kent is 29 years old. He is a lifelong Star Wars fan, avid con-goer, traveler, collector, husband, and cat dad to Kenobi. You can find him on Instagram at Sir Lancelot. Don't forget, this is Kent's personal story. It is not my place on the show to dismiss, diminish, judge, or have an opinion on his story. Any views, thoughts, or opinions expressed are his own. Any comments on this episode and story are expected to be respectful. This episode does come with a trigger warning. It does include some mature language and mentions of suicide, which can be triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is suicidal, please contact your physician, go to your local ER, or call the suicide prevention hotline in your country. For the United States, the numbers are as follows. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-TALK, which is 8255, or message the crisis text line at 741741. Both programs provide free confidential support 24/7. As always, please know that not every episode is for everyone, and there are plenty of other episodes that you can check out if you feel like this one is not for you. With all of that out of the way, please join me in welcoming Kent to Tales of the Force. Hi, Kent. How
Hello.
are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to get to chat with you about
Same here.
your Star Wars story and just all the fun things because I love hearing other people's stories.
Absolutely.
Do you want
Yep.
to tell people where they can find you? And I'll have all this stuff down in the bottom too.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at sir_lands_a lot. So that's just a little play on words with my last name there, Sir Lancelot.
Yes. I love
But
it.
I focus on a lot of collecting, especially autographs, some video games, some comic books. So if you like that sort of thing, go ahead and follow me.
Yes, check it out. All the things. Who is your most sought after autograph?
Ooh.
If you haven't, you might have already gotten it. If you haven't gotten it, who is it? And if you have gotten it, who was it?
Well, it was a couple for a while. I never got the chance to meet Carrie Fisher in person,
Same. I know,
but
yeah.
it, I was being pretty picky about what autograph I would choose to buy of hers because, if you're going to pay that kind of money, it's got to be one that you're absolutely happy with, 100%.
Yeah.
And so I finally got that one earlier this year. Otherwise, another one would have been like my Mark Hamill that had the quote, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. That was something really special right there. I've wanted
Yeah.
that for a long time.
Yeah.
But those are my. Otherwise, the only thing I could think of that I would want above those would be like an ensemble cast piece. But that's so far outside like the realm of, I don't know, approachability. It's just so out there for me, price range wise.
Yeah.
So I've accepted, like, if I don't get it, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And that's something as a collector I've learned, that you got to be okay with walking away. If
Mm-hmm.
something is if somebody's throwing you a price that's way too much and they're not willing to haggle a little bit, just be okay with walking away. Something else will come up eventually.
Yeah. I'm sure, but it's got to be kind of exhilarating and fun, if you are trying to negotiate things and
Oh yeah.
when you do get what you want, you're probably like, yes,
Yeah.
Like,
A
It's
lot of
like
times at
exciting.
conventions, I've seen that vendors will be more willing to haggle with you on the last day of the convention because they got to get their product out of there if they can. But
Yeah.
um, then you also run the risk of like, oh, somebody else might buy it. So you just got to weigh that risk.
Yeah, you're like, is it worth it for me to maybe get a cheaper price?
Yeah.
Or it might be gone. Like that's a hard thing. I feel like a lot of negotiations are that way where you have to decide, am I gonna walk away or what am I gonna do? It's kind of the haggle. It's fun. It's a good back and forth. What before we get into like your Star Wars story,
Mhm.
what is some advice that you would give people that are starting into collecting and they're going to a con and they're a little overwhelmed and they don't really know the whole process? Even like the things that you were saying about waiting to the last day, and they might be nervous to ask for a different price on something. Like, what advice would you have to the people that are new or wanting to get into that whole realm of everything?
Um, Something I like to do when I go to a convention, and I know I want to buy something, but I don't know what yet. Especially when it comes to something like Artist Alley, I would check out everything first. Make sure you know all your options so that you don't go over budget or anything. Like, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this. It's so easy to just see so much good art that
Yeah.
you would want to buy, but gotta rein it in sometimes. So I would say just make sure to check out what all your options are first, and then you can go from there and prioritize what you want.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to like negotiating or something, um, it's not rude to negotiate. And if the vendor can is telling you you're rude for it, then I feel like they're in the wrong business because that's what you do. That's
Yeah.
how this kind of thing works, at least for me.
Yeah, yeah. I've never purchased anything that was like a collectible or any of the products that, people are kind of negotiating on. Like that's way out of my realm of things right now. And so I've never experienced that, but I've heard of people going, especially like you're saying on the last day and being like, hey, can you bundle these things? Or I
Mhm.
want these things. And I'm sure it's important to look at all the different booths of those items too, because people probably have different pricing and different ones, I would
Mhm.
assume.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I noticed your Ahsoka behind you. You
Yes.
got you got good taste because
Do you have the same
I
one?
got the same one.
Ah, I love it. That's amazing.
I
That's
just have yet
amazing.
to frame it.
Yeah, I think that frame's from like Target or something. I love that you have the same one. That's so amazing. So, how did you get into Star Wars? Like how did that start for you?
Oh well, I'm one of those fans that doesn't remember a time without Star Wars. I was born in '95, so I was 4 when the Phantom Menace came out, and that could very easily be the first movie I ever saw in the theater. But um, that was amazing. There was just Phantom Menace mania back then. It was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing some of that merchandise. I had a Jar Jar lunchbox throughout elementary school, and then we got Attack of the Clones that came out in 2002, so I was 7, and then we got the Gendy animated Clone Wars micro series between episode 2 and 3, and then episode 3 came out in 2005, so I was 10. So Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen were childhood heroes of mine, and I did see the originals, of course, throughout that time, and I loved them. But I really didn't get into them until maybe around 2004 when my family got the special editions on DVD, that Chrome box set, and it came with the Empire of Dreams documentary. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it's so good.
Oh, it's so good. It gives you a really good insight to the time back when the originals came out, and gives you
Yeah.
a nice feeling of what it was like to be there. I mean, my parents were obviously they were there when the originals came out, so I get to hear from them. But it is also fun to get an behind the scenes view for all those, and that was good. But after Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005, it was the video games and the novels of Legends that really kept it alive for me until the Clone Wars came out. But even when the Clone Wars animated show came out at the time, I don't know why I thought this, but I was just like, it's just an animated kids show. I'm too old for that now. But
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I didn't watch it until the COVID lockdowns because my friend begged me to watch it. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, what have I been missing?
No, I feel you. Like I feel like I found all of that before, but I was definitely an adult when I found the Clone Wars and
Yeah.
Rebels and everything. And I think it was before Rebels finished. I can't remember what year that was. I think there was like another season of Rebels that was going to come out.
Hmm.
And so it was before that that I found Clone Wars, and then I found out about Rebels and all the things. And I was kind of like, I've always loved Star Wars, and Star Wars has always been a part of my life, but it wasn't really public yet at that point. And I had a friend that had a Star Wars podcast at the time,
Hmm.
and I ended up guesting on that. And, all the sequels and stuff were coming out, and it was like, it just like completely reignited everything for me. And then now, here we
Now
are.
here we are. All right, let's see. Backtracking a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, my parents would take me and my older sisters to Disney World every now and then when we were young, and we would get to see some of the Star Wars stuff that was down there at Disney World, like Star Tours. I loved that ride, and that's the first place where I saw autographs behind the cash register, and that's kind of what sparked that interest for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, it, I guess not at the time, it's still they're all super expensive there, but I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna go get those myself. But let's see. So, have you been to Galaxy's Edge?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
It's so
it's really
great.
cool.
Yeah, it is. It's so fun. It's like you just feel like you're in Star Wars. I love
Hmm.
it.
Absolutely.
What is your favorite part about Galaxy's Edge?
Ooh, tough. My favorite part is probably Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run.
Oh, it's so fun. Yes.
Rise of the Resistance ride is great,
Yes, it is.
but there was something so magical about walking into the Millennium Falcon cockpit
Mm-hmm.
and being able to actually fly it. That was something else.
Yes. Yeah, just seeing it there is like, oh my gosh, like it's just crazy.
Hmm.
So crazy. And it's so fun. And then like all the characters running around and all the things, and it's just, yeah, it's such a fun place. And everything's so themed down to like the food and the snacks. And even if you don't buy all the fun things, there's so many things to look at. And it's like, I mean, it's like it takes you back to being a kid. It's just so joyful
Absolutely.
and so fun. And it helps. I don't know, like Star Wars in general, like whether it's at Galaxy's Edge or a convention or watching a movie, I feel like any part of it, however you're a part of the fandom, it's just like, I don't want to say an escape because that seems kind of almost like it cheapens it a little bit, but it's such a great way to kind of get out of whatever is going on in life, or in the world or like whatever, like you can go to a galaxy far, far away and you can go back to a simpler time when you found it when you were a kid and you didn't have as many heavy things or different things, or you can find comfort when life was hard and you had Star Wars or a character or somebody to help you through that. So it's just such a magical thing, I
I
think.
like to say it's food for the imagination.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to put
Yeah.
it for sure. Is there any like specific stories or characters that have really impacted you in your life?
Oh, let's see. There's a lot of characters with great messages and great lessons, but my favorite character's got to be Luke Skywalker for sure.
Solid
And
choice.
that wasn't always the case.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, I always loved the comedic side characters like Jar Jar, Chewie, C3PO, R2D2. But if I it, when I was a kid, I also liked Obi-Wan because he had them good quips.
Yes,
But
always so snarky. I love it.
oh, Sass Master.
Yes, 100%.
But when I moved out in 2019 and bought my first house, The Mandalorian was coming out,
Yeah.
and I love that show. Um, but that was the first time when I was like away from my family for a long period of time, and so that's something that we would always be able to bond over. Like my dad was the one to get us kids into Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and me and my dad, I love him to death, but him and I have a lot of different interests.
Yeah.
Um, but Star Wars is always the great equalizer. We can always bond over that. And so, just a quick tangent, real quick. It's funny because my older sisters grew up in the Disney Renaissance, so they were all obsessed with the Disney princesses,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so my dad was able to get them to watch Star Wars because he's like, there's a princess in there, and they're like,
She's pretty
what?
cool.
But um, so watching Star Wars and The Mandalorian after I moved out was a way to still like hold on to a piece of home,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, oh my gosh, when Luke showed up at the end of Mando season 2, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was on cloud 9, and that got me to rewatch, all the Star Wars again in chronological order and all that, and then it really stood out to me how impactful and important Luke is,
Yeah.
and how important he is to me. Um, I've actually got some notes here. So let me pull those out here.
You're good.
But he's my favorite for a lot of reasons. But
Yeah.
I feel like if you want a more comprehensive character analysis, I would recommend going to the YouTube channel So Uncivilized. He's got my favorite character analysis on Luke I've seen, but I'm going to do my best to just give my reasons here.
Yeah.
But he's an admirable guy, he's at least at the end, because from the beginning he's, kind of your everyman, but then we go on this journey with him and we watch him grow and change and become the Jedi Knight he wanted to be. But I feel like I need to clear some things up because I've had some issues with
Yeah.
how a lot of people talk about Luke.
Yeah.
And a lot of them in person, like at the Chicago Fan Expo, I was on my way up the escalator to go to the Mark Hamill photo op, and there was a group of guys behind me on the escalator who had matching T-shirts. And I looked back and noticed and read, and it said, "The only good Skywalker is a dark Skywalker," and it had Vader and Luke on it, with with the black hoods and
Yeah.
looking all evil and stuff. And I went, oh, that's a funny shirt. Not in a rude way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then the guy goes, well, yeah, because Luke's a bitch.
Oh.
And I went, uh, I kept it in the thought bubble, but I'm like, oh, them's fighting words.
Yeah. Like what? What?
I had to rein it in and be like, why do you think that? And he goes, well, he's lost every fight he's ever fought. I'm like, first of all, not true. He beat Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, and he threw down his weapon in front of his arch nemesis and declared that he wouldn't fight anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the guy, like, that takes guts, right?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, well, he only did that because he knew he couldn't win. And I just went, oh, whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just good to just like walk away.
But
That's what
what's
I've learned.
funny is that then we got up there and I saw him wait in the Mark Hamill photo op line. So I'm like, what does that make you then?
Yeah, I don't understand. There's so many things I don't understand, and I'm like, why would you meet someone like?
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Absolute meathead take, but that's not the only time something like that has happened or come up in conversation, because
Yeah.
I guess a lot of people do see Luke as kind of like the generic hero archetype, the boring, sincere character that the larger story revolves around. Maybe like your Katniss or your Frodo.
Yeah.
But a lot of people I've talked to has also called him whiny. And you know what? He is whiny at the start of the
He's a
first film.
teenager. We
He's
were all
intentionally
whiny.
made that way.
Yeah, I mean, like they talk about that with Anakin, and I'm like, dude was a teenager. Like we were all
Absolutely.
whiny,
Yeah.
and nobody had good pickup lines as a teenager either. Like give the guy a break. I mean, really, like
So, yeah, we've all fumbled our words in one way or another. Come on.
yeah, we all get. I mean, I still can be whiny as an adult. Like, I mean, come on. Like, don't act like you're perfect. We all have our problems.
But that's the thing. Like, Luke starts out that way,
Yeah.
but he's always changing in
Mm-hmm.
every movie. And I feel like Lucas doesn't get enough credit for how well defined his characters are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in the first movie, Luke is, he's loyal, he's fearless, and he's impatient with people. Like when Han was like, who's going to fly a kid, you? And he's immediately like, oh, you bet I could.
Yeah.
But all those traits that make him a hero in the first film work against him, his destiny of becoming a Jedi in Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Because now being a hero is one thing, being a Jedi is another thing. That's something that is said in that Luke video that I've referenced earlier. Because in Star Wars, being a Jedi means so much more than just being a hero, because you also have to keep yourself in check. Whereas a hero, you can go in guns blazing, whatever, right? You know what I mean? But the Force is so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk more about philosophy of the Force, but we can.
You can. Yeah.
Let's finish up Luke here first. And another thing that's said in that video that I didn't even think about until I saw it is that in Star Wars, destiny is a trap. Because Obi-Wan and Yoda keep telling Luke, you gotta kill your father. That's the only way we're gonna win, and the Jedi will be able to live on. You have to kill your father. But then all that's flipped on its head when Luke finds out, oh, the Emperor also wants me to kill him. Because in Empire, that scene with Luke in the cave, and when he finds him, his face under Vader's mask, is a subtle foreshadowing that, destroying Vader and becoming him are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was amazing. When I found that out, I'm like...
Yeah, yeah.
But then when Luke finds this out, he has to choose his own path. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's an important lesson in life, of course. Like, it's important to, listen to others who, care about you and stuff. But at the end of the day, you need to choose your own path and what's best
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a third way, and only you can kind of find that.
Because Obi-Wan and Yoda, as good guys as they were more concerned about what was best for the Jedi. Now it was what was best for Luke, because it didn't feel like they stopped to think what this could do to Luke.
Yeah.
But him throwing down his lightsaber in front of Palpatine, it's not only it's not a physical victory like most heroes in films would have. Like, I'm going to beat the bad guy and best him. No, this is a moral victory, and that's what I feel like makes it so unique. And he has to put his faith in the only person he can, his father.
Yeah.
And so I just, because the greatest victories, I found this online. I did not come up with this line. But the greatest victories come not through domination, but through understanding. And I
Mm-hmm.
just thought that was really profound.
That is so good. It's so true. I think there's so much of a focus right now on winning, or, there's only two points of view, or if you're not this, then you're against us, or if you're not this, then you're bad, or if you're not this, whatever. And, you know, I think there is so much to say about how Luke found another way, and he found the way that wasn't just best for himself, but it really was best for everybody. And he kind of took a step back, and he thought through it, and he took his time, and he didn't let emotions cloud his judgment. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many times I have made bad decisions, or have hurt people, or haven't done maybe the best thing that I could do because I was just going off of emotions. I wasn't really thinking clearly, and emotions are valid and we should be able to feel them, but I think it's I was literally just talking to somebody about this, sitting in the uncomfortableness. Like, life is uncomfortable, and it is so easy for us to try to come to a solution for a solution's sake. He could have killed his father.
Yeah.
He could have done that. That would have maybe helped the Jedi, but it also was what Palpatine wanted. It also, he probably would have lived with the guilt of that and that decision for the rest of his life, and would have known that it was based off of emotions. But instead, he sat in that tension. He sat in the uncomfortable of the fact that his dad was Darth Vader, but he was also Anakin. He was also his dad. And he took the time in that fight to sit with that and say, no, I'm not going to fight you. There is another way. And he might not have even known how that was going to work out. He might have thought that he was going to die, but he
It was a
wasn't.
leap of faith.
Yes, and he wasn't going to rush
Mm-hmm.
doing something that he could not take back, and he couldn't change
Yeah.
that after. And I think that's actually really powerful and very strong over beating someone in a fight. And I think that just takes a lot of emotional maturity and maybe life experience
Oh, yeah.
to realize that. And I mean, you can also have a lot of life experience and not learn from that life experience. So it's not all on that, but yeah.
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 So that was my Luke rant.
I love it.
All
It's
right.
so good. Yes. And I'm a person that had a hard time honestly connecting to Luke until, this is controversial, but until The Last Jedi. And because he really struggled, and because he was kind of in the depths of being depressed about things and feeling honestly shame for a lot of stuff. And he wasn't just the hero that made the right call. And that, what for me was important to see someone who had made the right decisions in the moment that was hard to make them, to also not always make the right decisions, but he still didn't make the wrong decision. He came back on it, but it was like a lesson on, for me personally, like perspective, right? Like, we can think about doing something and not do it, but that perspective still might be ruined for somebody else at the same time. And so I don't know, like I loved seeing, I mean, I didn't love it because it like sucked to see him in that place, but it
Yeah.
also, I also loved it because I felt seen in a way, and I felt like, okay, if Luke Skywalker can struggle with these things, then and he's Luke Skywalker, then I can be okay. And so I think that that was helpful for me to see in times when I've been like in a dark place, and
Yeah.
to see that someone like Luke, who had so much hope and who had so much, well, I can do it, like you were talking about with Han, in that moment, like, who's going to fly at you? And he's like, yeah. The confidence and the joy that he had and everything to be gone, but he was still Luke. And like, I don't know. It was so comforting for me to see him and to see him still be himself in the end. And,
But
and
and
that was good
that's
for
why
me.
heroes in stories are so important, because in low points in our lives we can think, what would Luke do? What would Leia
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
it's like different for different people. And
yeah,
I've said this, and I'll always say it when I'm talking about Luke and the version of him in The Last Jedi. It doesn't work for everybody, and that's valid and that's fair. I think it's fair for people to want a Luke that never hit that low, to need to see a hero never hit that place, because for them, they needed to see him always make the normal Luke Skywalker type decisions. And that is 100% valid too. It's just, again, it's perspective.
yeah,
It's a completely different perspective. So I don't want to like invalidate someone else's feelings on that, but but that's where I think us as like people in the fandom can learn to ask questions like you were asking. Well, why does that make you perceive him that way? Like, why is it that you don't like this or whatever? And I think it's important, and it is a mature place for us to be able to look at it and go, you know what? I know people personally that don't like that movie, and that's okay. And
yeah.
I know people that love that movie even more than I do, and that's okay too. And it's okay for us to look at things and go, that didn't speak to me, or this didn't speak to me. It's not my favorite. That doesn't inherently make it a bad whatever, or not a Star Wars movie, or it just didn't hit you
It
right in the
it's
right
all art.
place.
It's all subjective.
Yeah, yeah, and that's okay. And
Yeah,
I hope that as a fandom we can learn to have those conversations, and it not be like a fan card of that you carry, or who's right and who's wrong, because there is no right or wrong. You can like and you can dislike that movie. And that
exactly.
just,
Like
like.
like I said earlier, like the greatest victories come not through domination but through understanding. And
Yeah.
like, if of course you're aware of like how the fandom is online, it's just one side barking at the other, I'm right, you're wrong. But like 90% of all interactions I've had at conventions with other fans, you know everybody's chill about it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you didn't like that? Oh, that's cool. Oh, you
Yeah.
did like that? Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Why? People be like, "Oh, that's why did you Oh, that makes sense. I get that." Like, it is very like, it's wild that, and it's wild, but it's also so true that people are, I think, a lot bolder online to say
Oh,
things. And I think,
it's because they can hide.
yeah, and it's like, or even if they don't want to hide, it's like you can be as noisy as you want, and it's okay, but it's like harder to be that brash, I think, in person.
Oh, absolutely, because you have
But
to deal with that person real time.
yeah, and it's like, okay, like, there's a lot.
Yeah,
Like, there's so much I could go into, but it's like, at the end of the day, I think, I don't know. I do have hope that we can come to a better place, and that we can learn that we can have that kind of healthy discourse even online. Like, it is possible. It's just going to take a lot of people coming together to go, you know what, we're going to agree to disagree, but we're not going to like bully each other. And I don't know what it's going to take to get to that point, but who knows? It could happen. I'm going to be
exactly. Like you
trying to
said,
be
both
hopeful.
sides, both your feelings are valid,
Yeah.
and you know what? It's okay to voice your dislike or like, because a closed mouth never gets fed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, how are the creators supposed to understand what you like or dislike if you don't voice it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once you've said your piece, that's it. Move on.
Hmm. That's kind of how I am. Like I'm fine saying this didn't work for me or this or this or this or whatever, but I don't want to dwell on it. That's just not my vibe.
Exactly. I'd rather
There's
dwell
enough
on things that are more fun.
I don't know, like real life is hard enough. Like I don't want to make like Star
Yeah.
Wars something that I love just a downer all the time. That's just
Yeah.
me. So like, do what you want to do, but that's like I do want to keep it like as I don't want to be toxic positive, but I do want to keep it like as um fun and enjoyable as possible because it is something fun for me and I don't want to turn it into something that isn't fun or enjoyable anymore. So,
Absolutely. But, changing gears a little bit here,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
I just wanted to bring up me and my wife. We're about to celebrate our second anniversary. Thank you.
Congratulations.
But for our honeymoon, we couldn't decide between a couple of places we both wanted to go. I won't go too deep into it, but I wanted to go to
Yeah.
Norway
Yeah.
for a few reasons. But one of them is there's a town called Finse, and that's where they filmed the outdoor scenes in The Empire Strikes Back and the Hoth scenes.
Okay.
And they talk about that in Empire of Dreams, that they stayed at this hotel, and like it was like the worst winter in like 100 years. So much snow to the point where they couldn't get the camera crew outside of the door. So those scenes when Mark Hamill is stumbling around in the snow, those cameramen are standing inside filming him. And they have a bunch of screen used costumes and
Oh, wow.
stuff like that there. And so that was really neat to see. And, 10 years before that was like the lowest point in my life. And so, I was dealing with a lot of depression and a lot of suicidal thoughts and a suicide attempt. But, life is full of possibilities, whereas
Yeah.
death is so final.
Yeah.
Because I could have never imagined where I would be in 10 years, right?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, I'm in a totally different place, and I'm in a place that's historically significant to me, I guess, with Star Wars.
Yeah.
But specifically on the date, we were at a place called Trolltunga, which is a famous hiking trail. And if you want to know more about that, you can see on my Instagram. Shameless
Yes.
plug.
Yeah,
But
I love it.
um, yeah, I just thought I should throw that in there because it's important to remember that things might be bad now, but it doesn't mean they can't be better.
It's very true. And I just want to say, as someone that has struggled with similar things, I am so glad that you're still here. I am so glad that your story is still going. You know that with your friends and your family and your wife, you're very much loved, you're very much needed here.
Yeah,
And I'm so glad that this is where you are and that, this
me
is
too.
the outcome of things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is a good time to jump into the Force.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for feeling also like open to share that too. So,
Absolutely. Like,
yeah.
if you want to have me on again for to talk about that in more depth, I am more than willing to.
Of
Because if I can help
course.
at least one person, then it's worth it.
Yes. Yes. It's so important. It's
Yeah.
so important. And I feel the same way. And I think it is such an important thing. And it is, um, I think there is the stigma around mental health is getting better, but I think there's still a lot more to go.
Mhm.
Um, and it is so cool to see how something that has helped me so much, like Star Wars, has
Mhm.
also helped so many other people. And when you find out that like other people have found comfort in something that you found comfort in, and just having that camaraderie with people is another way I think to fight that battle with your mind. Yeah, so thank you for sharing. And yes, you can come back on and share more about that. You can share more about that now. You are free to do whatever you are comfortable with. So,
Absolutely. Well, I think we should jump into the
of
Force.
course,
Well, I feel like in your mind, who is the chosen one?
in my mind,
Yeah, to you, who is the chosen one?
okay, so hmm, me being such an Anakin fan, I want to say Anakin.
Yes.
But me also trying to think about how the Force works and how prophecies in general can be misinterpreted. It can be things like that can be used to whoever's advantage is trying to read between the lines to make things work. Um, I still think it's Anakin, but
Yeah.
like I also feel like maybe it could also be a combination of people, but I don't know. Like I want to say it's Anakin,
No, I
but
totally agree. I totally agree. I
no
mean,
one come for me, okay?
no, 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 no.
People are gonna be like, "That's not how the Force works," or something. I don't know.
They're pulling out Han Solo from Force Awakens.
Yeah.
That's not how the Force works. No, no, absolutely. I feel it's 100% Anakin, and so does George Lucas. So you got
Yeah.
him backing you up on that one. Because balance in the Force, I feel like, is misunderstood a lot. Um, I hear a lot of people talk about how it's got to be equal parts light, equal parts dark. But from Lucas's perspective, and since he is the maker, I go by what he says.
Yeah.
It's the absence of dark.
Yeah.
Um, because if you notice in the films, they never call it the light side; they call it the Force, right? So that's its normal state of being. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
And
And then,
I have thoughts that I think
ooh,
can bridge the gap between those two.
hmm,
I'm just saying this so that my brain doesn't forget this,
okay,
but please continue. I don't want to
yes,
interrupt you.
because the dark side corrupts. It's a downward spiral. It it consumes. It throws things out of harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
So I agree with that,
Hmm.
but I also see what people are trying to say. I think maybe it's just not phrased in the best way. And I think what they're coming from when they're trying to say a balance between the two of them, or it's got to be dark and light or whatever, is I think I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it so that I'm not phrasing it in the worst way. Um, is there is a lot of like psychology stuff in Star Wars, and a lot of things that so like Lucas, like Joseph Campbell was one of his huge like influences and one of his mentors who was massively influenced by Dr. Carl Jung. And so or Jung, like I'm not going to say it right again, like I'm the worst at pronouncing things.
It's all
But
good.
anyway, so there's a lot of stuff with archetypes, and if you go deep into the psychology, and a lot of people agree with it and a lot of people disagree with it, but there's a lot of stuff about like facing like your darkness or your shadow, and like how you can't get to the light until you face like the dark parts of yourself. So I think there's like two parts to this that I think people can confuse, that there needs to be dark and light,
Hmm.
and what Lucas is saying. And
Yeah.
so I think people are trying to say the same thing, but they're just using different terms. And so it can get confusing.
Hmm.
So I agree that there's like the Force, and it's not necessarily referred to as like the light side of the Force. I think, however, within the years of the dogma of the Jedi, which I'm not saying the Jedi are bad, but
Hmm.
I do think there was some things that got misconstrued, and they got kind of focused on the wrong things
Oh,
versus
absolutely.
like what the Jedi was intentionally supposed to be. So
Hmm.
when you focus on different things, and you think about the code, and you think about like Anakin and Padme's conversation about if the Jedi are allowed to love, and how you look at his kind of explanation around it, which was definitely from a place of trying to get what he wanted and
Yeah.
still skirt through the rules, but at the same time, it wasn't exactly wrong. Like he was coming from a selfish place and trying to again get what he wanted out of that, but at the same time, I think the Jedi kind of did get a little bit into dogma and into kind of a rules based type thing that maybe wasn't initially what it was supposed to be intended.
Oh
So
yeah.
when,
Totally agree.
yeah, and so when Lucas is talking about like, this is what the light side is and there's no dark in it, I think maybe what he's referring to is what the Sith consider the dark side,
Mm.
and what they pull from anger, they pull from hate, they pull from fear, they pull from all these things. And then if you look at the Jedi, like they're pulling from not having any emotion and being, balanced in that way. So that's where I get where people are saying you can't have one without the other. And so what I think maybe is a better explanation is if you looked at the Force and you looked at, and this applies to real life, you have emotions, right? Emotions aren't bad. It's what you do with them. So how do you center yourself, and how do you move forward in the light or in the Force without using anger to do bad things, and without using fear to control someone, or without loving someone in a way that you're possessing them, right? And so it's, to me, it is, the Jedi were kind of too much on one side of trying to rule out all emotion, and the Sith were on the side of trying to just use these raw emotions for power, right? And so I think that's maybe what people are trying to say when they say there has to be some of the dark in with the light, is what they're saying is if you view emotions as dark,
Mm.
if you view having emotions as the dark side of the Force, if you view it as Sith versus Jedi, I kind of get what people are trying to say. That you need to be balanced. You need to be able to balance your emotions and not ignore that you have emotions. I think that's maybe what people are trying to get at, but really what it should be is just like maybe the light side of the Force. Think of like maybe like Bendu in Rebels or something like that. He was angry. He did all these things, but he didn't use them to accomplish the dark side's goals. Does that make sense? And
It
so,
does.
yeah,
I have
that's
thoughts
that's
on
kind of
Bendu.
like what I'm wrestling with
Yeah.
that, because I don't think there needs to be the dark side in someone in order to necessarily be like balanced. I think it's that you have to face that side of yourself. Kind of like if you look
Yes.
at Anakin and like the Shadow Warrior, which is very much like very psychology minded, is that like he faced the Vader part of himself. Like he came to grips, he took responsibility, he accepted all of the horrible things that he did, and he accepted that he made mistakes, that he had, this dark side in him. But what is he going to do with that now
Mm.
as he is on the other side of the Force, that he is balanced or whatever? It's not that he has light and dark in the sense of that he's using the light and dark. It's just that he's, I think, accepted that there is the capacity for darkness in him. But so I think that's maybe also what people are trying to say,
Mm.
accepting the capacity that there is darkness in you, but instead you're going to choose how to handle those emotions in a better way, and you're not going to use them for those selfish reasons.
I absolutely agree with that point
If that
because
makes sense at all. I'm trying
absolutely
to explain it in the best way I can think of.
because characters, as they're written in Star Wars, typically, I won't do this as like a blanket rule,
Yeah.
but it's not a story about good people and evil people. It's about characters who can choose good or
Yeah.
evil. The dark
Yeah.
side and the light side are the paths these choices can take them down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think maybe the wording is just not always right, but I
Yeah.
think what people are trying to say is that to be balanced, you have to accept that there is dark in you. That doesn't mean that you have to be dark side and light side together.
Hmm.
It's that you have to accept that there is parts of you that are going to want to go in that direction. But being in the light and being balanced, which is, I think, the light side
Hmm.
of the force, is accepting that and learning how to use those emotions in a good way and not in a negative way. And so I don't know. I think it's like phrasing can kind of be off, and then people are like,
And
"You
here's the
said
thing:
this and you meant this," and it's like I don't know. It can get
the
misconstrued.
force
So
is such a abstract concept that our it's such a spectrum that our understanding is forever evolving on. That's how I feel about it anyway.
yeah.
Um,
But that to me, that's like what I think what Lucas is like saying too. Like
yeah.
there is no, yeah, there's not darkness in the light side, and that is the balance. But like people have worked, and maybe he just didn't like say, all of that part. But to me, if you look at like the psychology and things that he's basing it on,
Mhm.
someone who is balanced has worked through that darkness. And
Oh,
so,
absolutely. Yes.
and instead of running from it and trying to act like it's not there, kind of like the Jedi did by trying to suppress emotions, you're like aware of it, and that brings you balance. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think it's like the semantics is a little different, but like people
Yeah,
are
because
trying to say that, but it comes across in the wrong way. I don't know.
the Jedi in the prequels were, I mean, I'm pretty sure Lucas was trying to illustrate that they had not fallen, but lost their way a little bit. They've become
Yeah.
dogmatic. They've started to deny basic human things like emotion, attachment. And it's not like they forbid emotion, but acting upon it, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Um, but especially attachment, though. That's when I feel, I don't feel like, this is just me, my opinion, but I don't feel like attachment should have been treated as the enemy, but the fear of loss should have been. And how
Yeah.
you
It's like the possession of something, like that is like
exactly.
yours. Like
And
you
you
can
have to be willing to let it go and
mhm.
let change happen.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
what makes the Sith, I guess, the Sith, because they're trying to control the uncontrollable. Whereas when you are, I guess, a balanced individual, you have control over yourself
Mhm.
versus what you cannot control.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I love this kind of stuff. This is
I
like
love talking
yeah.
philosophy on the Force. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's fun. But no, I totally get what you're saying, and I think like, I don't know. I think people are like trying to say that, but it comes out and I don't know. It's so complicated.
It's the Force. You move rocks.
Yeah. I can feel it.
But that's part of why, not moving rocks, but Luke in Legends, in the novels and some of the video games, when he was creating his new Jedi Order and creating these new rules, oh, I loved that stuff.
Yeah.
That was
I hope
so
we get
good
more
to,
of that in some way.
yeah. Like, we saw a little bit in Book of Boba Fett, that episode where he made Grogu choose.
Yeah.
Um, I hope at some point that Luke will come to the realization that it's okay to have bonds and attachments because that's what brought Vader back to the
Yeah.
light is his love and attachment to his son.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I love that some fans have pointed this out that Obi-Wan was able to get half of the mask off. Ahsoka was able to get the other half off, but
Yes,
only
yes, yes.
his
I
son, Luke,
Mhm.
was able to get the whole mask off and bring
Mhm.
Anakin back.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
I love
that.
that.
I do too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's good, and I think the Jedi would have viewed that attachment as the dark side. And so that's where I'm
Mhm.
saying like there's the semantics. Like
Yeah.
the Jedi would have viewed that as the dark side, but someone who is balanced
Mm-hmm.
isn't viewing it that way. And so that's where I think that, again, that misconception comes because, I think so many people think of the light side as the Jedi and they think of the dark side as the Sith. And
Yeah.
so that's where it can get kind of confusing too, because I don't think Lucas is referring to even what the Jedi interpret that to be. It is what it should be, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Absolutely,
So,
because Lucas had the idea of the wills, right? And so they're a power even greater than the Jedi, and so
yeah.
that we don't get too much about them, but like like you said, the light side or the Force is not just Jedi. It can be other things like the wills, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's so fun. I love them expanding on things and you know, going off of different things and trying to create, I don't know, just new ideas and different things. And it's fun to see that kind of all play out. And um, I'm excited for things that, we'll get in the future. It's really fun.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else, I guess, that you want to add to as we kind of wrap up our time today um, about your story with Star Wars or what's important to you with all the different things?
Well, um, just a quick fun story before I go into my conclusion, I guess.
Yeah.
When I first met Mark Hamill and Ewan McGregor in San Francisco, um, I don't usually get starstruck, but of course I had to get starstruck in front of them because I'm like, oh, they're real people. Oh my gosh, they're not on the
Yeah.
screen. And so I just had to, bring it in, just try to not act like a weirdo. But it was during the photo op with Mark when like they want you in and out, right?
Hmm.
So I had to think like, how can I summarize how I feel and the gratitude I feel towards you in like a quick sentence? And so I just, he shook my hand and he's like, "Hey, thanks for coming." I'm like, "Thank you for being you."
Yeah.
And he
I
goes,
love
"You're welcome."
I just love him. He's so great.
I
Oh, he was the one person that I was so nervous. I was nervous before, obviously, but then once I get into the space, I'm like, there are people, it's fine. I get a little nervous, but it's not starstruck nervous. But Mark was just it's just different,
Oh yeah.
it's Mark Hamill. My hand was
I'm gonna be Mark Hamill.
I know. I had sorry if I've already told this on here for people, but I've been giving because I'm from Arkansas and we have quartz crystals here. And so I've been giving Arkansas quartz crystals when I am able to run into people at the different things, which we missed each other in Chicago. And I'm so mad about that, honestly. And it's so hard. I feel like I have a list and I'm going to see all these people. And then I don't know, something just doesn't line up, or you have a panel and someone has a photo op. But when I do get to run into people at conventions, I've had little crystals and sticker for the podcast that I've been handing out. And I decided to, well, I gave one to Hayden. Was it in Chicago? And then I was like, oh, I can give them to other people. And so I was looking through them and I was picking out the ones for which one I wanted to give Mark. And I remember going up there and I had this whole thing in my mind. And normally I'm pretty good about saying what I want to say.
Yeah.
I am a little nervous. It's fine, but I get out what I'm going to say and it's fine because I think about it and it's all good. I was going to say, hi, Mark, my name's Jessica, blah, blah. So nice to meet you. This is such an honor to meet you or whatever. I'm from Arkansas. We have quartz crystals and it's a kyber crystal and I wanted to give you one. I was going to say something like that. Okay. I walk up. I have it in my hand and my hand is literally shaking, shaking. And he sees it. He's like, oh, hi. And I was like, hi. I literally was trying not to cry. My face is literally getting red because it's so embarrassing. And he was like, hi. And he like kind of touched my hand. And I'm like, I have this crystal for you. Can I give it to you? Like that's literally all I could get out. I don't even think I said it's I'm from Arkansas and it's from Arkansas. Like I literally was just like, oh my gosh. And he was like, it's so beautiful. I would love to take that. Thank you so much. And I'm like, okay. And like you see in the picture, I'm like holding it in my hand because they're like, all right, and we take the picture and I have it in my hand. I'm like, here. And he like puts it in his pocket and I walked away and I was like, oh, that was so dumb. I can't believe I just did that.
Oh, I'm sure they get it all the time.
But he put it in his pocket, which was really sweet. But I was like, you're gonna be cool, Jessica, be cool. I was not cool. It's like those movies. She was not cool. Like,
Oh, or when I met Ewan McGregor, I'll keep this one quick. But that was the same day, and it was my first time seeing him in a photo op ever. And
he's so nice.
he's very nice, but just for historical accuracy, a little bit, I'll say I walked up and he shook my hand. He goes, "Hey, how you doing? Good to see you." And I go, "You're fucking Obi-Wan
I wanted to
Kenobi."
do that so bad and I couldn't do it. I was too nervous.
And he goes, I am Obi-Wan Kenobi." Just like that one interview he was on, you know the one,
I
right?
love it.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it so much. So much. Oh my gosh. I love that he loves that people are still doing that because that whole thing is so funny. That interview is so funny, and you
Mhm.
can see just like the joy in his face that he's like, I am Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I could absolutely see him chasing kids saying that too.
Like you better behave. I am Obi-Wan
You better
Kenobi.
believe I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I'll throw you in the lava too, or something. I
Oh, he would
don't know.
absolutely be unhinged enough to
Yeah,
say that.
yeah. You better behave.
Oh,
Oh man, yeah, he's so nice. He's so nice. Yeah,
yeah.
I was able to give him some too, and I put one for Mary like in there too for his wife. And um, it was so wild because I met him in LA,
Mhm.
and his handler there it was this like massive man. Like I swear this man was like 6'6". Like he was so tall, and I'm 5'1". And so like he's standing there, and it was the most rushed photo shoot I have ever been in my entire life. And so I'm trying to leave and I'm like, bye, like saying bye. And because I'm really awkward in those situations when people are like yelling at you. And I'm like, oh, I just don't want anyone mad at me. Like, I'm leaving. Okay, 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 okay. Like, don't yell at me. I'm going. And so all of a sudden, this guy that I saw him is like right here. And he's like so tall. And he's like leans over and I'm like, gosh, what did I do? Is he gonna yell at me? Like I'm so scared. And he was like this massive man. And he goes, oh, that was just so sweet that you brought him those crystals and it was for you and for Mary. I just had to tell you, like, I just love that. Like that was just the sweetest thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're welcome. Like, sure. Like I don't know what to say. Like, thanks for not about to boot me out of here. So but yeah, it's so fun. And if people like have the opportunity, like I know like conventions are expensive and doing those things are expensive, but
Yeah.
like if you want to do it and you're able to do it, like you can like try to make it happen even if it's a dream celebrity and like you've always wanted to meet them, like budget well, save up for it. But well, is there any other con advice, I guess, or anything that you want people to take from what you've shared today as we wrap it up?
I guess closing, I would want to say that it's never too late to make the right choice. Is something that it's a lesson I've taken from Vader and Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vader had done irredeemable things, but at the end of the day, he was a man who fell and in the end chose the light. And you can make many mistakes in life, but it's never too late to make the right one, to make
Yeah.
the right choice, and start making things right.
I think that is great. That is great advice for people and a great reminder, and definitely something that Star Wars covers very well. Um, Even better than I think happens like in the real world. Like people are able to have second chances, and I think there is a difference, between the redemption and you know, almost like restitution in a sense of like what you've done, but there might be things that you have to change, or there might be, consequences from actions at the end of the day, but it still is never, it's never too late, like you're saying, to choose to do the right thing, or to change something, or to come back to the light for sure. And hopefully people around you can be there to support, whatever that is. So, and if not, there's always the found family, like in
Yep.
Star Wars. Your people are out there. I know sometimes it feels like they're not, and it can feel so alone, and it can feel so dark. And yeah, it's easier said than done to have hope, but I think that's something that also that we learn for sure from Star Wars too, is just to find that little glimmer of it, even if it's little, even if it's silly, but if it's something to get you through to the next day, like find that little thing. So
One day at a time.
yes, definitely, definitely. Well, Kent, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with me and with everyone else. And it was a pleasure to have you share your story, and to get to talk to you for this time.
Yeah,
So thank
absolutely. Thanks
you.
for having me.
Thanks for joining me today on Tales of the Force. This podcast was hosted, produced, and created by me, Jessica McNair, with music by Michael Hoover. Don't forget, our stories of hope is the force of this fandom, and they are a powerful ally to each and every one of us. Life creates them, makes them grow. Their energy surrounds us and binds us together. Luminous beings we all are, not this crude matter. May the Force be with you always.